Can a single moment break something that took years to build? In front of a crowd, under the shimmer of chandeliers, a man raised his hand against the woman carrying his child while another woman watched. But what he didn't know was who she truly was. Amelia Hartley stood in silence, the soft hum of evening settling around her like a fragile veil. Inside the dim glow of her dressing room, she gently ran her fingers over the silk folds of her pale lavender gown, its elegance hiding the quiet truth of her changing body. She was 3 months along. The world hadn't noticed yet, not really, but she felt it, the tenderness in her frame, the quiet presence growing inside her like a secret only a mother could know. Her eyes, golden brown and tired, met her own reflection. She didn't smile. Instead, she chewed the inside of her cheek, a reflex born from years of swallowing words. From down the hall, footsteps marched with impatient rhythm. "We're running late," came the voice of her husband, Adrian Ward. Cold, precise, wrapped in the kind of control that sounded polite to strangers, but always left bruises on the inside. Amelia looked at herself one last time. Her hair was gathered into a soft knot, delicate earrings barely grazing her neck. She looked like someone else's idea of beauty, someone else's idea of perfect. "I'm coming," she whispered, as much to herself as to him. She reached for her clutch and stepped out. Adrian stood waiting, dressed in tailored black. The sharpness of his suit matched only by the chill in his steel blue eyes. He scanned her appearance with all the warmth of a merchant inspecting goods. "That dress?" "Never mind," he muttered. "The car's out front." The ride to the Halverton Royale passed in silence. Streetlights flickered through the windows, painting her face in shifting shadows. Amelia turned her gaze toward the night, her hand resting gently over her stomach. "Just breathe, darling," she heard her late father say in the back of her mind. "When the world feels too heavy, come back to your breath." The ballroom was alive when they arrived, glittering in chandeliers and champagne, filled with names that carried power and faces trained to smile. Adrian disappeared into the crowd within minutes. "I need to speak with the Rothman group," he said curtly. "Try not to look so absent." His hand pressed into her arm, just enough pressure to remind her. Alone now, Amelia made her way to their table. Familiar faces greeted her with empty warmth, their words rehearsed and safe. But Amelia was always watching. She saw the way Adrian's assistant kept glancing toward the terrace, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifted her glass. She heard the hush that fell when she approached certain conversations. Time passed. An hour, then another. Adrian never returned to their table. But Amelia saw him through the crowd, near the edge of the ballroom, always drifting back toward the same place, the terrace. A tightness grew in her chest, that quiet inner voice that had warned her before. That whisper she'd silenced too many times. Something was wrong. And this time, she was listening. The walk toward the terrace felt longer than it was. As Amelia passed clusters of Halverton's most polished elites, their laughter and sparkling chatter dulled into distant echoes, like sounds underwater. Beyond the towering glass windows, the city stretched out in glittering lights, indifferent and eternal. A breathtaking view yet tonight, it felt like a cruel backdrop to something breaking open inside her. She heard them before she saw them. Adrian's unmistakable laugh, low and charming. Then a softer one, feminine, flirtatious. A sound that didn't belong to her. Her hand trembled as she pushed open the terrace doors. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blooming white oleander from the manicured garden beds. She would never forget that smell. Not after tonight. There, half-shadowed beneath an ivy-covered archway, stood Adrian. His arms were wrapped around a woman in a deep crimson dress, their bodies far too close for innocence. Amelia knew her instantly, Celeste Monroe, the new hire in Adrian's firm, the same woman who dropped off reports and espresso at their home last Sunday, complimenting Amelia's roses with a syrupy smile. Adrian. Her voice was calm, eerily so. A fragile kind of calm, the kind born from heartbreak, so deep it silences even the instinct to scream. He turned slowly. No guilt, no regret, just irritation, like she was a disruption at a meeting. Celeste shifted slightly, but didn't let go. Her hand remained on his forearm, as if it belonged there. Amelia, Adrian said with that cold, steady tone she had come to dread. You're making a scene. Go back inside. Her lips parted before her thoughts could catch up. How long? Inside her, the child they created stirred, responding to the charge in the air, to the unraveling. Don't do this here, Adrian warned, his jaw tight, voice colder, his eyes, once a shade of stormy blue she had loved, now looked like polished ice. I have the right to know, she whispered, stepping closer. Each word was a small rebellion. How long have you been lying to me? From the ballroom behind her, the quiet murmur of curiosity grew louder. Faces began to turn. Cameras were raised, Adrian's veneer cracked. He took a step forward, towering over her. The mask he wore so well had fallen. You want honesty? He spat. Celeste gets what a man like me needs. She doesn't second-guess everything. She doesn't act like a saint while playing the victim. And no, she's not the first. Each word landed like a slap. But the real one came moments later. I'm carrying your child, Amelia whispered, her hand protectively resting over her stomach. Adrian's expression twisted. Without warning, his hand struck her face. The sound echoed, loud, final. Gasps followed, then the rapid-fire clicks of phone cameras, capturing everything: her stumble, her tears, her shame. You brought this on yourself, Adrian hissed. Always prying, always pretending you matter. Without me, you're nothing. In that single, suspended moment beneath the stars, surrounded by silence and judgment, something ancient inside Amelia shifted. The woman who had endured in silence for years began to disappear. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just turned, slowly, with the kind of strength that looks like grace. Each step back inside was careful, steady even as her legs trembled beneath her. She reached her car before the sobs came. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone. Dad. Her voice cracked like old wood. I need you. And Mom. Please, come to Halverton. She drew in a ragged breath. Everything's falling apart. By morning, she was curled up on the edge of a guest bed in her best friend's house, still wearing her silk pajamas from the night before, the only thing she had time to take with her when she left at dawn. But for now, this unfamiliar room, with its quiet walls and soft light, felt like the first safe place she'd known in years. Her phone lay face down beside her, screen still flickering every few minutes, like a heartbeat she didn't want to hear. The video had gone viral overnight. Clips of his slap were playing on every Halverton morning broadcast, the headline blaring across social media, Silvergrove scandal, CEO's assault caught on camera. She didn't need to watch it. Her cheeks still remembered the sound. From the doorway, Lila brought in 2 mugs, steam curling like soft fingers into the quiet. Her voice was gentle, measured. Your parents' flight lands in about an hour. Lila had been Amelia's friend since college, someone who didn't need details to open her door at 5 in the morning when Amelia showed up with mascara-streaked tears and a single overnight bag. I can drive you, if you want. Amelia reached for the tea. Chamomile. Warmth pooled in her hands, grounding her. I think I should go alone, she said quietly, then added, after a pause, They don't even know about the baby yet. Downstairs, the TV hummed from the kitchen. The news anchor's voice drifted faintly upward. Sources confirm Adrian Ward, CEO of Ward Global, has yet to return to his Silver Grove estate following last night's highly publicized altercation. Amelia flinched. Can you turn it off? Lila nodded and slipped away. The moment the silence fell, it felt like the house exhaled. When she returned, Lila sat beside her, on the guest bed, legs tucked beneath her. The police called again, she murmured. They're asking if you want to press charges. Amelia didn't answer right away. Her hand had drifted to her belly, instinctively like it always did now. I can't think about that yet. I just need my parents. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't pick it up. Adrian's name glowed on the screen. 3 missed calls from his mother lined up beneath it like accusations. She could already imagine the scene. Vivian Ward, phone to ear, rehearsed charm in her voice, trying to spin the story into something survivable. For the family's sake. You should eat, Lila offered gently. For the baby. The thought of food made Amelia's stomach twist, but she nodded, forcing down another sip of tea. Somewhere, in the house she'd fled from, her prenatal vitamins still sat unopened beside the bathroom sink. Home. The word felt foreign now. I keep replaying everything, she whispered, eyes fixed on the swirling tea leaves. The late nights, the sudden trips. How he always turned his phone screen away. I saw the signs, Lila. I just didn't want to believe them. A dry, bitter laugh slipped from her lips. I always thought I was the one who notices everything. Lila reached over and gave her hand a quiet squeeze. You saw what you hoped for. That's not weakness. That's love. Time moved like honey, slow and heavy. Amelia showered in Lila's bathroom, slipping into borrowed clothes that hung awkwardly on her changing frame. Every movement felt like going through the motions of someone else's life. The only thing that still felt undeniably hers was the soft flutter inside her belly. A life that didn't yet know the world had broken. At 10:15 a.m., she stood in the arrivals terminal of Halverton International Airport, eyes scanning every face that passed. Her father's text had been brief. Terminal S. Almost there, sweetheart. And then she saw them, before they saw her, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she allowed herself to hope again. Through the flow of arriving passengers, Amelia spotted the unmistakable silhouette of her father. James Hartley moved with quiet determination, his weathered hands gripping their carry-ons as if carrying something far heavier than luggage. Beside him, Helen's smaller frame kept pace, her eyes scanning every face with a mother's intuition. They looked exactly as they had the last time she'd seen them, Christmas Eve in Vermont. Dad in his favorite, faded flannel. Mom in her usual floral cardigan and soft-soled shoes. But something about their presence so ordinary, so them, Miss Amelia's carefully held composure finally give way. Mom? Her voice cracked. Daddy? Helen was beside her in an instant, wrapping her daughter in arms that still smelled of lavender and home. Amelia buried her face in her mother's shoulder and let the tears come. James stepped close, placing one steady hand on Amelia's back, strong, solid, like always. I'm here, sweetheart, Helen whispered, gently stroking Amelia's hair, just like she had when she was a child afraid of thunderstorms. We're both here now. I have to tell you something, Amelia managed between sobs. I'm pregnant. Helen froze, just briefly, breath catching. James's grip on the luggage handle tightened ever so slightly, but neither stepped back. Instead, James moved forward, wrapping both women in his arms. A circle of shelter in a world suddenly too loud. We'll get you out of here. he murmured into her hair, voice trembling beneath its strength. We'll figure everything out, together. They walked through the parking structure, like a family holding on to what remained, Amelia between her parents, like she was 5 years old again. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, she felt something stir beneath the wreckage. Hope. It was small, tentative, but it was alive. Back at Lila's home, the guest room had become a fragile sanctuary. Helen moved around the borrowed kitchen as if it were her own, hands finding comfort in the rhythm of boiling water and toasting bread. The scent of tea leaves steeping filled the quiet. The clink of ceramic, the low whistle of the kettle. Small sounds that reminded them all how to breathe again. You need more than tea, darling, Helen fussed gently, setting a plate of toast beside Amelia, who sat curled in the oversized armchair, a blanket wrapped tight around her. For the baby, she added softly. Across the room, James stood by the window. The light of late morning stretched his frame into long shadows. He hadn't said much since they arrived, but his stance watchful still was the same as it had been when Amelia was small. He used to stand just like that during storms, as if he could block out the thunder. Finally, he spoke. Have you contacted a lawyer? Amelia nodded slowly, clutching the edges of her borrowed sweater. Lila recommended someone. Catherine Walsh. She deals with things like this. Things like this. The words felt foreign on her tongue, cold, clinical, as if her life had been reduced to paperwork and damage reports. Good, James said, then went quiet again, jaw tight with unspoken thoughts. Helen returned with 3 mugs of chamomile, her go-to comfort since Amelia scraped her knees on playgrounds. She handed one to her daughter with both hands, her touch warm and familiar. Nothing a good cup of tea can't fix, she murmured, settling into the chair across from her. The light caught in her curls, revealing strands of silver Amelia didn't remember seeing at Christmas. I should have seen it coming, Amelia said, barely above a whisper, her eyes fixed on the surface of her tea. All the signs were there. The missed dinners. The phone turned over. The sudden business trips. She swallowed a bitter laugh. I thought I was the one who noticed everything. It was always the smallest things, Amelia whispered. A misplaced remote. Dinner, 5 minutes late. The wrong tone in my voice. She swallowed hard. I just kept making excuses for him. Across from her, Helen's hands trembled slightly as she placed her mug down on the coffee table. She opened her mouth to speak, hesitated, then glanced at James. There was a moment of quiet, unspoken, yet full, like a shared memory, passing silently between them. And then Helen turned back to her daughter, her voice gentle, but steady. Amelia, she said, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago. She reached up and twisted the simple gold ring on her finger, something Amelia had seen her do for years, but had never thought to ask about. James walked over from the window and sat beside her, perching gently on the arm of her chair. He placed one hand on Helen's shoulder, offering a silent kind of strength. Before I met your father, Helen began, her eyes growing distant, I was married. His name was William. Amelia froze. In her 32 years, she had never once heard that name, never once imagined that her mother, calm, wise, unshakable Helen, had lived another life before the one she knew. He was like Adrian, Helen continued, her voice softer now. Charming to everyone else, but behind closed doors, he chipped away at me, piece by piece. Amelia sat upright, her tea cooling, forgotten in her hands. It started with little things, how I looked, how I cooked. Then came the isolation. He didn't like my friends, said my family was too involved. Eventually, I stopped recognizing myself. Her words hung in the room like smoke. And then one day, she said, He hit me. And that was the moment I realized I didn't know who I was anymore. Mom? Amelia reached for her mother's hand, her own trembling. I left him on a Tuesday morning, Helen said, eyes unfocused, caught somewhere in memory. Packed one suitcase while he was at work, took a train to Cincinnati, and stayed with my sister. I jumped at every knock on the door, every footstep. I was terrified he'd find me. James's thumb moved in soft circles over Helen's shoulder. She applied to be my office assistant, he said gently, used her maiden name, kept quiet. But she had this way about her, leaving little notes, remembering birthdays, making people feel seen. Helen looked up at him and smiled. He was the first man who made me feel safe, who reminded me that real love doesn't bruise. She turned to Amelia, her voice trembling, eyes shining. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you from knowing this kind of hurt existed, but maybe I should have. No, Mom, Amelia said firmly, her voice breaking. This wasn't your fault. None of it. Helen got up slowly and knelt beside Amelia's chair, taking both of her daughter's hands into her own. Listen to me, sweetheart. You are stronger than you think. And that baby, she placed her hand gently over Amelia's stomach. That baby is going to grow up watching a mother who taught them that the bravest thing you can ever do is begin again. James cleared his throat, his voice rough with the emotion. We'll go to the house tomorrow, he said, while he's still gone. Get what you need. Amelia nodded, squeezing her mother's hands. I've been thinking about it. What to take, what to leave behind. She managed a small smile. The quiet one always notices everything. She looked up at her father. I know where all the legal files are. The backup drives, the hidden financials, all of it. James nodded, pride softening his features. That's my girl. As the last light of afternoon slipped through Lila's living room windows, the three of them sat close bound, not just by blood, but by love that had endured storms. Outside, the city of Halverton kept moving, but in that room, 3 generations had chosen to stand still for each other. Inside Lila's living room, time moved differently. Like Helen's tea, cooling slowly on the table, unhurried, quiet, so restorative. But outside that cocoon of safety, reality waited. The gate code hadn't changed. Amelia's fingers trembled slightly as she typed in the numbers digits, once tied to anniversary dinners and private jokes. Now, they only felt like cold keys unlocking a house that no longer felt like hers. James's rental car rolled up the long, circular drive. The sound of gravel beneath the tires, loud in the silence. The mansion came into view, Georgian style, grand, immaculate. Once it had been her dream. Now, it looked like a carefully staged memory she couldn't quite touch anymore. He's not here, Amelia murmured, scanning the driveway. Adrian's black SUV was gone. His mother called Lila last night, she added, bitterness creeping into her tone. Said he's at their lake house. Taking time to process. She almost laughed. Almost. Helen reached forward from the back seat, giving her daughter's hand a soft squeeze. Let's be quick, then. They moved with quiet efficiency, like a team on a mission. Amelia had spent the night preparing, organizing lists in her head, the way she used to plan dinner parties or work events. Only now, she was planning an escape. Important documents from the office, jewelry from the safe, external hard drives, her prenatal vitamins, essentials only. James positioned himself near the large front windows, silent and watchful, a steady presence in the storm. The safe combination is my birthday, Amelia said as she knelt before it. Her voice was flat, almost detached. He said he'd never forget it that way. The lock clicked. The heavy door opened. Neatly arranged inside were rows of jewelry boxes and official papers. Helen held open a canvas bag. Amelia moved with purpose, placing each item inside. Her engagement ring, a dazzling 3-carat stone, went in last. She paused, staring at it. "Did you keep yours?" she asked, not looking up. "From before, Dad?" "No," Helen replied softly. "Sold it, paid for my lawyer." She gently touched her daughter's shoulder. "Each story is different, sweetheart. Do what feels right for you." In Adrian's home office, Amelia's hands flew across the desk like someone who'd rehearsed this moment. Because she had. Years of being the perfect wife had taught her every drawer, every file, every password. She collected USB drives, copied folders she'd quietly backed up over the past year. The deeper she reached, the more she discovered proof of what she'd long suspected. James stood at the doorway, watching. "Smart girl," he murmured, pride and pain tangled in his voice. "I notice things," Amelia replied, fingers tapping keys. "Every time he slammed his laptop shut when I walked in, every call he took out in the garden, I started saving things, just in case." She copied the final folder, restored the desktop to its original state, and shut the computer down. Nothing looked out of place, but everything had changed. The master bedroom was the hardest. The bed was still made, just like it had been 2 mornings ago. The last time she slept there, unaware. Her side of the closet was untouched. Clothes arranged by season, by color. Everything was as she had left it. Except she no longer belonged to this version of her life. "Only what you need," Helen reminded her gently, holding open a suitcase. Something warm, something soft. Essentials. The rest, she waved her hand. "The rest is just stuff." Amelia nodded, selecting clothes that fit her changing body. A few framed photos from her side of the dresser. The baby blanket her grandmother had knitted before she passed, meant for a happy announcement that would never come. She pressed the soft yarn to her chest for a moment, closing her eyes. In the kitchen, she hesitated. In the kitchen, she paused. The refrigerator was still covered in photos, held in place by decorative magnets from vacations and dinner parties. One photo caught her eye, a picture from last year's Christmas party. Before the baby, before everything shattered. In the photo, she and Adrian looked like the perfect couple, his arm around her waist, both smiling toward the camera. But now, with clearer eyes, Amelia saw what had always been there. The subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her body leaned ever so slightly away from him. Her smile, though radiant, never quite reached her eyes. James stepped beside her, silent, and gently pulled the photo free. "For the file," he said, slipping it into a folder. "Catherine Walsh might find it useful." They continued the task, like quiet ghosts moving room by room, collecting fragments of Amelia's 5-year life in this house. Pieces of herself she chose to take, and all the lies she chose to leave behind. 2 hours later, the final bag was zipped shut and carried to the car. The air felt lighter, emptier. Just as Amelia reached for the door handle, her phone buzzed. A text from Celeste. "We need to talk about the offshore accounts." Amelia froze, her heart skipping. Her instincts sharpened instantly. The quiet one notices everything, she reminded herself. And she had those unexplained wire transfers, the strange Friday afternoon meetings, the folder she once found mislabeled and photographed without a word. Adrian thought she was at yoga. She was in his office, documenting the cracks. "Ready?" James called from the driver's seat. Amelia turned back one last time. Through the windows, she saw the kitchen, where she used to arrange flowers for dinner parties. The living room, where she sat silently through Adrian's rages. The staircase she had climbed night after night, tired, uncertain, unseen. "Yes," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. "I'm ready." She didn't look back. Instead, she opened her phone and forwarded Celeste's message to Catherine Walsh. The quiet one was quiet no more. Catherine Walsh's office was nothing like the polished halls of Ward Global, where Amelia had once spent afternoons arranging charity galas under flickering chandeliers. Here the walls were a muted gray, functional, lined with degrees, not expensive art. The woman behind the desk matched her surroundings, focused, efficient, and refreshingly grounded. This text from Celeste Monroe is a turning point, Catherine said, scanning the documents neatly spread before her. Amelia sat between her parents. Her hands, resting protectively over the gentle rise of her belly, were steady now, her back straight, her voice ready. She's scared, Catherine added, looking up. And she should be. James leaned forward slightly. What exactly are we looking at? Catherine selected a thick folder and opened it. According to Amelia's documentation, Adrian has been funneling significant funds through a network of shell companies. Small amounts at first, increasing steadily. Several documents show Celeste's signature as a secondary authorizer. She's not just complicit, she's embedded. Amelia nodded, her voice low but certain. I started noticing it last spring, Fridays mostly, when he thought I was at my yoga class. She paused. She could still remember those afternoons, the quiet click of the camera on her phone, the sound of her own breathing as she hurried to record page after page. Helen reached for her hand, her touch gentle. You were so brave. No, Catherine said with a small smile. She was smart. She tapped her keyboard, bringing more files to life on her screen. Most of my clients come to me with suspicions and no proof. You gave me evidence. That's rare and powerful. She glanced at Amelia again, and the video of the assault in our favor. Catherine's voice was calm but resolute. Public sympathy is overwhelmingly on your side, and Adrian's actions, especially the assault, have made several board members very uneasy. She glanced up from her notes. They're worried about liability. Amelia bit the inside of her cheek, a small but familiar gesture. Catherine had already learned it meant she was holding something heavy inside processing, recalibrating. He's not the only one calling, Amelia said quietly. His mother rang again this morning, said I was destroying the family name, that I should think about my child's future. Catherine didn't flinch. That, she said firmly, is textbook manipulation. And let's be clear, protecting your child is exactly what you're doing by fighting back now. She pulled another file from the stack. Let's talk about the prenuptial agreement. He said it was standard, Amelia murmured. I didn't even have a lawyer look it over. I was so... Her voice trailed off in quiet embarrassment. In love, Helen said softly, finishing the sentence for her. Amelia gave a small nod. Catherine's eyes were kind but focused. The good news is, there are several clauses we can challenge, especially with documented abuse and financial misconduct. And more importantly, she looked directly at Amelia. The agreement makes no mention of children. Your baby changes everything. Before Amelia could respond, a knock came at the door. Catherine's assistant entered with a fresh stack of documents in her arms. Celeste Monroe's attorney just called, she announced. She's offering a deal. The room stilled. Amelia's mind flashed back to that night on the terrace, the stunned crowd, Adrian's raised hand, and Celeste, standing just a few feet away, watching but not intervening. James's tone turned sharp. What kind of deal? She's willing to testify about the offshore accounts, the assistant explained, in exchange for full immunity. Catherine turned to Amelia. This is your decision. Her testimony could be pivotal, but I understand if the thought of working with her is too much. Amelia closed her eyes for a moment, then straightened in her seat. The quiet one notices everything, she said softly, half to herself. The way she always looked down when Adrian raised his voice. How she'd check her phone the moment meetings ended. She was afraid of him too. She looked at Catherine. She's a victim, just a different kind. Possibly, Catherine agreed carefully. But that doesn't mean you owe her anything, Amelia thought of her mother's story, of how it felt to begin again with nothing but courage in your pocket. "Tell our lawyer we'll consider it," she said, her voice firmer now, "but only with full disclosure. Every document, every bank's transfer, every conversation, no more secrets." Catherine nodded, a note of quiet respect in her gaze. "I'll set up a meeting for next week." She slid a card across the table. "This is the contact of a realtor I trust. She's helped women in situations like yours find safe, fresh starts. That Midtown apartment you mentioned, it could be exactly what you need." As they gathered their things, Catherine touched Amelia's arm gently. "There's one more thing." Her tone shifted. "The Davidson family's PR team released a statement this morning. They're implying emotional instability, blaming pregnancy hormones, suggesting mental health concerns." Amelia saw her mother stiffen beside her. Her father's hands clenched into fists, but she only breathed in once. "Let them," she said, surprising even herself with the calm in her voice. "They think I'm still the woman who stays quiet." The quiet one kept all the receipts. As Amelia stepped out of Catherine's office and into the bright Halverton afternoon, something shifted inside her. Not just the baby, a soft flutter beneath her ribs, but something deeper, a settling, a knowing. She was no longer the silent shadow beside a powerful man. She was a woman with proof, with purpose, and a voice that no longer trembled. The Midtown apartment was nothing like the grand Silver Grove mansion. And that was the point. Sunlight poured through bare windows, stretching across hardwood floors and golden puddles. There was no furniture yet, no curtains, no echo of anyone else's life, but the air felt open, unwritten. She stood in the room that would soon become the nursery, tracing invisible shapes on the freshly painted walls. The crib would go by the window, maybe a rocking chair in the corner. "The building has excellent security," Lisa Bennett, the realtor, said gently, scrolling through her tablet. "24-hour front desk, secured parking, full surveillance and shared spaces, and it's a 15-minute drive to your new job." Amelia nodded, fingertips brushing the clean wall. The space was smaller than her old walk-in closet, but it didn't feel like less. It felt like freedom. Her parents had insisted on covering the deposit and first 3 months' rent. "Time to breathe," her mother had said. "Time to become who you are now. The lease is ready whenever you are," Lisa offered, her voice soft. She'd done this before, helping women start over. She knew when to wait. "I'll take it," Amelia said. Her voice didn't shake. Not this time. 1 hour later, she held the keys in her palm warm from someone else's hands, now hers. A new beginning, pressed into metal. Helen emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, like she'd been working magic rather than testing water pressure. "The faucets run beautifully," she announced, as though she'd discovered treasure. "And there's a sweet little cafe just around the corner for those mornings when you need something warm and kind." Amelia smiled, recognizing the effort to make things feel normal. "You don't have to pretend this is what you hoped for me, Mom." Helen's face softened. "What I want," she said simply, "is for you to be safe and happy." This, she gestured around the apartment, is the first step toward both. James appeared in the doorway, keys still in hand. "Spoke with the front desk guard," he said. "Ex-military. Sharp. Takes protocols seriously. I asked about visitor policies. Just being thorough." "Dad," Amelia began. He raised a hand. "We've been talking," he said, exchanging a glance with Helen. "We want to stay in Halverton a while longer. Help you settle. You have lives back home," she whispered, fighting tears, "jobs." "We have you," Helen said, firm as stone. "James can work remotely, and my garden club will survive without me." A soft ding broke the moment. Amelia glanced down. Message from Celeste's attorney. Client willing to provide full documentation, requesting a meeting at neutral location. She showed the text to her parents. James's jaw clenched, but he didn't say a word. He was learning to let her lead. "I'll have Catherine arrange it," Amelia said, at her office. No more closed doors, no more whispers. Later that afternoon, she sat by the window in the cafe her mother had found, sipping decaf tea from a chipped, white cup. Her laptop glowed softly on the table. Next Monday, she would begin work as an administrative assistant for a small, family-run construction firm. The salary was modest, the benefits were solid, and for the first time in years, the only strings attached were ones she was willing to hold. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Lila. "News crew outside the Silver Grove house. Adrian's mother is giving interviews. She's concerned about your mental health." Amelia closed her eyes and inhaled slowly, just the way her father had taught her during childhood storms. In through the nose, hold, exhale. Let them twist the story. Let them play their game. The quiet one didn't need noise. She had evidence. Opening her inbox, she found a new message from Catherine. Several legal documents were ready for review. The formal challenge to the prenuptial agreement, now supported by claims of abuse and financial misconduct. A draft restraining order, waiting for Amelia's approval. She read every word carefully, the way she always had. And then, unbidden, came a memory Adrian laughing at her over dinner, calling her obsessive, for labeling file folders, for scanning every receipt, for tracking household finances down to the cent. "You need to learn to relax, darling," he used to say, usually right before doing something that would require those very records to undo. The baby stirred a soft, rhythmic flutter beneath her ribs. "We're going to be okay," Amelia whispered, hand resting protectively over her bump. "The quiet one is making sure of that." Another message came through. Unknown number. "Mrs. Davidson. This is Robert Chen from the SEC. We've received some troubling information about Davidson Enterprises. Would you be willing to speak with us?" Amelia stared at the message for a moment. Then, without hesitation, she forwarded it to Catherine. The quiet one's documentation was about to make some noise. Helen returned to the table with warm tea and a plate of muffins, settling across from her daughter. "You've got that look," she said, studying Amelia's face. "The same one you used to get when a jigsaw puzzle was almost finished." Amelia closed her laptop, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Just thinking," she replied, "how sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should have been paying attention to all along." The SEC's Halverton office was almost aggressively bland. Beige walls, humdrum furniture, and the soft drone of fluorescent lights created an atmosphere meant to be forgettable, disarming. But nothing about this moment felt small to Amelia. She sat at the long table, 5 months pregnant now, the curve of her stomach visible beneath her loose blouse. Catherine sat to her left, poised, composed. Across from them were Robert Chen and 2 other investigators. Thick files, spreadsheets, and screenshots lay neatly arranged. "These transactions," Chen said, sliding a few documents forward, "match precisely with what you documented. The patterns, the timing, even the file metadata." There was something like admiration in his voice. Most people wouldn't think to timestamp photographs of bank statements. Amelia's voice was calm, measured. "The quiet one notices details." Catherine stepped in smoothly. "My client has provided extensive evidence of financial misconduct within Ward Global. We're fully prepared to cooperate." Chen nodded. "Mrs. Davidson, Miss Hartley," Amelia corrected gently. "I've filed to restore my maiden name." A brief pause. "Of course. Miss Hartley Celeste, Monroe's testimony supports your findings. The shell companies, the offshore transfers, the falsified ledgers, it's all there." He leaned forward slightly. "But we believe this reaches beyond Adrian Ward." The baby shifted again, Amelia's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. She glanced at Catherine. His mother, she said. Margaret Ward. She's been on the company's board for over 2 decades. Catherine nodded. Tell them about the charity galas. Prompted by Catherine's quiet nod, Amelia drew a steady breath. She closed her eyes for half a second, letting muscle memory guide her years of silent observation at black tie galas and glittering fundraisers now flowing back with a strange clarity. The Ward Family Foundation hosts 4 major charity events every year, she began, voice even. Elegant, exclusive, but the numbers never added up. Robert Chen leaned forward, expression unreadable. I helped with the guest lists, Amelia continued. I reviewed donations, logged RSVPs, and I started noticing patterns, people giving large sums, but only a fraction of that ever appeared in the Foundation's public filings. Chen scribbled something into his notebook. His tone remained neutral. Money laundering, among other things. Catherine nodded. We believe the Foundation was used to move both incoming and outgoing funds discreetly. What followed was 2 hours of precise, relentless unpacking. Spreadsheet by spreadsheet, file by file, Amelia laid out a narrative that had taken her a year to silently gather. Photographs, timestamps, names, routing numbers, handwritten notes, and whispered suspicions now weaponized into something irrefutable. By the time they emerged from the building, the air felt charged. Catherine glanced over and offered Amelia something rare. A smile. Do you realize what you've done? The SEC doesn't move fast unless they're sure. This could dismantle the entire Ward empire. But Amelia didn't smile. Her voice was calm, clear. I didn't do this for revenge. No, Catherine agreed. You did it because the quiet one sees the truth. And the truth needs to be heard. Back at her apartment, the transformation was underway. James was installing extra locks on the windows while Helen unpacked boxes in the nursery. The once empty rooms were becoming a home. How'd it go? James asked, setting his tools aside. Amelia opened her mouth to respond, but her phone buzzed. News alert. Ward Global. Under federal investigation. Stock plummets. Helen appeared in the doorway, her hand stained faintly with yellow paint. Is that why Margaret Ward's been calling non-stop this morning? I finally blocked her number. Amelia handed them her phone. Within minutes, more alerts poured in from every major outlet. The media storm had begun. Then came the calls. Reporters, former acquaintances, distant relatives, all wanting a quote. Turn it off, James said firmly. Let Catherine handle the press. Amelia nodded, silencing the device. She walked to the nursery and leaned against the doorframe, taking it all in the half-assembled crib. The sunshine-colored walls, Helen had insisted on painting herself. Every baby needs a room filled with light, she'd said. A rocking chair sat in the corner. A gift from Lila. I never wanted any of this to be public, Amelia whispered. Helen joined her, resting a gentle hand on her back. You wanted justice. There's nothing wrong with that, James added, stepping beside them. The quiet ones, he said, voice softer now, often have the most important things to say. He smiled faintly. Your grandmother used to say that. Amelia returned the smile, her hand drifting to the baby blanket, folded neatly in the dresser drawer. She was right. A knock at the door made them all pause, but it was only Lila, arms full of takeout bags and a triumphant grin. You're everywhere, she said, stepping inside. They're calling you a hero. The internet is blowing up. I'm not, Amelia protested. No, Lila agreed, setting the food down. You're just the quiet one who finally spoke up. She gestured toward the kitchen. Now eat something. That baby's building muscles, and we've got nursery furniture to finish. They gathered around the small table, the scent of warm noodles and fresh tea filling the room. Amelia felt the baby move again, stronger now, more certain, just like her. Like truth finding its way to light, Amelia thought, like silence finally learning how to speak. Morning sunlight spilled across her desk at Anderson Construction, soft and golden, catching on the edges of her organized folders and color-coded notes. She was 6 months pregnant now, and the quiet rhythm of her new job had become a kind of healing. No schemes, no scripts, just real work, real people. Carol Anderson, the owner's wife, appeared beside her desk with a familiar warmth and a steaming mug in hand. At 70, Carol carried the kind of grace that didn't need to be loud. She treated everyone like family, and Amelia, perhaps, a little more tenderly than most. "Tea, my dear," she said, offering the mug. "Thank you," Amelia smiled, accepting it gratefully. Her computer screen glowed with several open tabs, news sites tracking the continued collapse of Ward Global. Overnight, the company's stock had taken another 15% plunge. The SEC investigation was making waves. Her phone buzzed. Catherine Walsh. "Margaret Ward is holding a press conference at noon. Adrian will be there." Amelia's fingers tightened around the mug. The baby stirred like it could feel her heartbeat rising. "Bad news?" Carol asked gently. "Just complications," Amelia replied, minimizing the windows. "Nothing I can't handle." Carol placed a hand on her shoulder, steady as stone. "Of course you can. The quiet ones always can." At lunch, Amelia sat in the break room, her tablet propped up as the press conference began streaming live. Lila sat beside her with untouched sandwiches and narrowed eyes. Outside the polished headquarters of Ward Global, Margaret Ward stood at a podium, impeccably dressed, impeccably cold. Behind her stood Adrian, thinner, pale, hands folded like a man rehearsing remorse. "My son has made mistakes," Margaret began, her voice deliberate and calm. "He's sought professional help for anger management and is committed to healing. But these malicious claims of financial misconduct are nothing more than the vindictive accusations of a scorned woman." Lila let out a dry laugh. "Well, that's bold." Amelia said nothing. Adrian stepped forward to speak. His notes trembled slightly in his hands. "I deeply regret my actions that night. I've failed my family, my company, and most importantly, my wife and unborn child. Amelia, if you're watching, please, let's handle this privately, as a family." The baby kicked hard. Amelia rubbed her stomach gently. "He'll be surprised," she murmured, "when the SEC releases their findings tomorrow." Lila nodded. "Catherine said it's going to be comprehensive. Once it's public, there's no going back." Her phone buzzed again. A message from James. "Don't watch that circus. Mom's making your favorite tonight. Come straight here after work." Amelia smiled, replying quickly. Her parents had extended their stay without hesitation. They'd rented a small apartment just a few blocks from hers, furnished and temporary, but filled with the warmth of familiarity. James worked remotely now, fielding consulting calls in his soft Vermont drawl. Helen had filled the little kitchen with herbs and love, turning it into a sanctuary, a place where Amelia didn't have to be strong all the time, just herself. And that, finally, was enough. That afternoon brought an unexpected presence to Anderson Construction's quiet front office. Celeste Monroe. She no longer looked like the poised analyst from charity galas. Gone were the sharp heels and designer suits. In their place, jeans, a sweater, and nerves. Her car keys jingled in her hands as she stood. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly as Amelia approached. I needed you to know they're trying to blame everything on Adrian." Amelia stayed silent, studying the woman who had once been her husband's mistress. "Margaret's behind it," Celeste continued. "She's setting him up, making him the fall guy to protect the family name." "Why are you telling me this?" Amelia asked. "Because," Celeste's voice wavered, "the quiet one deserves to know the truth." A pause. "And because I'm done being afraid of them." Back at her desk, Amelia immediately called Catherine. Her lawyer's tone sharpened with urgency. This changes things. If Margaret's sacrificing Adrian, it means she's desperate. Amelia looked toward the framed ultrasound photo beside her monitor. The baby, strong and healthy, at the last checkup, seemed to ground her. "What do you need me to do?" "Nothing right now," Catherine replied. "Stay focused on your life. Let me handle Margaret Ward." After work, Amelia drove through Halverton's soft evening traffic. The skyline, once a backdrop to a life built on appearances, now seemed full of honest beginnings. Helen opened the apartment door before Amelia could even knock, pulling her into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and home. "Bad day?" she asked. "Complicated," Amelia replied, stepping inside. "But I'm okay." James glanced up from his laptop. "The quiet one always is." Amelia settled into the couch, accepting a warm plate from her mother. Outside, the city's lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere across town, the wards were likely gathering lawyers, spinning stories, and scrambling to reclaim control. But here in this modest living room, with her parents close and her child growing stronger, Amelia was exactly where she needed to be, surrounded by love and truth and peace. The next morning, the thunderclap hit. Amelia sat at her desk as headlines flashed across her screen. Ward Global, under federal investigation for massive financial fraud. Family foundation implicated in laundering scandal. Margaret Ward resigns as board chair. 7 months pregnant now. Amelia pressed her hand to her stomach as the baby moved in sync with her racing heart. Everything she had quietly documented, every photograph, every note, had helped expose a web of deception that had gone on for years. And now, the storm had reached its center. A message from Catherine lit up her screen. "Turn on Channel 4, now." Carol Anderson appeared moments later, wheeling in a small breakroom TV. Employees gathered, murmuring, as the live broadcast flickered to life. Margaret Ward stood on the courthouse steps, impeccably dressed, voice calm, but something in her eyes had fractured. "These allegations are baseless," she declared. "My son and I built this company with integrity." A reporter stepped forward. "Mrs. Ward, can you comment on the evidence provided by your daughter-in-law? The offshore transfers? The falsified records?" Margaret's face hardened. Amelia Hartley is a disturbed young woman seeking revenge for a failed marriage. But before she could continue, another reporter raised their voice. "The SEC confirms the investigation was opened based on her documented evidence. Would you like to respond to the timeline discrepancies in your charitable foundation?" The camera caught it, the flicker in Margaret's eyes, the tremor in her hand. And for the first time in decades, Margaret Ward had no script to fall back on. "The evidence provided by Miss Hartley has been independently verified," the reporter said, voice echoing through the break room. "Your own daughter-in-law helped expose more than a decade of financial crime." Amelia watched the live broadcast unfold, and on the courthouse steps, the facade finally cracked. Margaret Ward, the woman who had once made Amelia feel small, with a single glance, stood frozen beneath the weight of public truth. Her expression, once meticulously composed, now flickered with something raw, vulnerable. Catherine's text buzzed on Amelia's phone. "They're taking her in for questioning. Adrian, too. It's happening." Carol reached out and gently squeezed Amelia's shoulder. "You okay, dear?" Amelia took a slow breath, then nodded. "I really am." That afternoon brought another surprise. Robert Chen arrived at Anderson Construction in person. Carol offered her private office, insisting it be used for sensitive discussions. "They're offering a deal," Chen said once the door was closed. Adrian's agreed to testify. Full cooperation. Amelia sat very still, one hand resting on her belly. "In exchange for what?" No jail time, Chen said, but significant fines, and he'll be barred from future corporate leadership. He added, he's also willing to sign an uncontested divorce, full custody to you, and a fair settlement. Amelia's eyes narrowed. Why now? Chen offered a faint, knowing smile. Because the quiet one's evidence was too solid to ignore, and because Margaret kept her own record's insurance, we think. Against everyone, even her son. That evening, Amelia sat, curled up on the worn sofa in her parents' apartment. The sky beyond the window was painted in soft streaks of gold and violet. On the muted TV, footage showed Adrian being led into a federal building. No handcuffs, but no smile either. I never wanted to destroy them, she said quietly. James didn't look up from his crossword. No. You wanted the truth. They destroyed themselves, trying to bury it. Helen emerged from the kitchen, holding a warm teapot in one hand. How's the little one handling all the excitement? Amelia smiled as a kick answered the question for her. She placed a hand on her belly. Active, she said. I guess like mother, like child. Helen nodded. A fighter, just quieter about it. Her phone buzzed again. Messages from Lila, cheering her on. Catherine, confirming legal motions. Even Celeste, once her enemy, now an unexpected ally, checking in. Then came one final message. From a number she hadn't saved. Just a single line. I'm sorry for everything. Adrian. She stared at it for a long moment. Not with anger, not with longing, just recognition of the man he used to pretend to be. Of the man he never truly was. Of the story that was no longer hers to carry. She looked down at her belly and whispered, the quiet one sees everything. Then added, including when it's time to let go. Outside, a summer storm was beginning its slow crawl across the city. Lightning traced the sky, silver against the deepening blue. The empire the wards had built with intimidation and image had crumbled, not with explosions, not with headlines, but with quiet truths, stitched together by a woman they never thought could. Thunder rolled in the distance, and within her, the baby kicked again, strong and sure. Amelia smiled, her hand resting on the place where life was growing. The child of the quiet one, steady, alive with possibility. Helen appeared beside her with a warm mug of chamomile. Tea? Amelia accepted it with both hands, breathing in peace, and sipping, finally, from comfort she had earned. Did you ever imagine, after you left William, Amelia asked, that one day you'd be helping me through something like this? Helen settled beside her on the couch, her eyes soft with memory. I imagined you'd be stronger than I ever was. Amelia reached for her hand. We both were strong, she said gently, just in our own ways. James folded his newspaper and joined them by the window. Together, the three of them sat in silence, watching the storm drift across Halverton's skyline. Lightning flashed in the distance, a quiet ballet of power and change. The quiet one had found her voice, and the thunder, it seemed, had answered in approval. 2 months after the Ward empire fell, Amelia sat in the nursery of her midtown apartment, gently rocking in the chair by the window. The city stirred slowly beneath the sunrise, soft gold spreading across rooftops and tree-lined streets. At 9 months pregnant, she felt the weight of everything, the fullness of new life inside her, and the long, jagged journey that had brought her here. Beside her, on a small table, lay the morning's edition of the Halverton Journal. Margaret Ward pleads guilty to federal fraud. Faces up to 15 years. Next to the headline sat a freshly signed divorce agreement. Full custody. A secure future. A chapter closed. The nursery walls still painted that soft sunshine yellow. Her mother had lovingly chosen glowed in the early light. Carol Anderson's quilt draped over the crib rail, stitched with stars and wildflowers. And on the dresser, folded neatly, was the knitted blanket from Amelia's grandmother. Waiting for the little one, it was meant to warm. "Can't sleep?" Helen asked gently, appearing in the doorway, already dressed and ready for the day. Amelia smiled, her hand resting on her belly. "Your granddaughter's practicing her kickboxing," she said. "The quiet one's daughter might not be so quiet." Helen laughed, bringing over a cup of her signature chamomile tea. She settled into the second rocking chair, Raymond's thoughtful gift, because every nursery, he'd said, needed a spot for Grandma. "I got an interesting call yesterday," Amelia said, taking a sip. "The women's shelter downtown wants me to join their board. They think my story might help other women find their voice." Helen looked at her, eyes shining. "Will you do it?" Amelia nodded. "Not for publicity, but if what I went through can help even one woman rise, then yes." A sharp kick made her pause mid-sentence. Downstairs, James whistled softly in the kitchen, his usual morning tune, mixing with the hum of traffic from the city waking up. It was the sound of her new life, a life earned, not given. Her phone buzzed. "Lila, ready for your last day before maternity leave? The office has a surprise planned." Amelia smiled. She thought of the Anderson construction team, the laughter in break rooms, the quiet respect, the day Carol and her son offered her a permanent position as operations manager. What began as temporary shelter had become a foundation, a home. The quiet one landed on her feet, she whispered. "You did more than land," Helen said. "You soared." A knock at the door. Amelia opened it to find Celeste holding a bag of warm pastries, their now weekly ritual. The woman who had once stood on the wrong side of Amelia's story was now part of her circle of healing. They no longer talked about courtroom battles. Now they talked about books and names for babies and the quiet courage it takes to begin again. "I brought those pastries you like the ones that are pregnancy safe," Celeste called from the doorway, holding up a warm paper bag with a grin. "And I've got news about the foundation." The Ward Family Foundation's assets had been officially frozen. Their books were now under federal review. But Amelia wasn't letting that stop the causes that mattered. She and Catherine had already begun working behind the scenes to make sure that the real charities, the shelters, the scholarships, the food banks, wouldn't be the ones paying for the ward's crimes. "The quiet one thinks of everything," James said, appearing with a tray of fruit and eggs from the kitchen. They gathered in the small, sunlit dining room of Amelia's midtown apartment. The air smelled of tea, pastries, and something warm and comforting. Her baby stirred again, a soft roll beneath her skin. "Doctor said it could be any day now," she said, her hand resting on her belly. "Bags packed, nurseries ready. We're just waiting on her now. I've been thinking about names," she added, accepting a cinnamon roll from Celeste. "Something that means strength, but not loud strength. The quiet kind." Helen nodded with understanding. Strength that endures. Strength that bends, but doesn't break. "Dawn," Amelia said softly. "It means the beginning of light. When darkness fades and truth emerges." Celeste raised her teacup. To Dawn, then, and to her mother, who taught all of us that quiet strength changes everything. The sun had risen fully now, casting golden light across Halverton's skyline. Amelia felt dawn move within her again, strong, certain, ready. She looked out the window at the city that had once been a stage for pretense. Now it was simply home. The quietest voice, Amelia said, often carries the deepest truth. Helen reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "And sometimes," she added, "the quietest person in the room is the one writing the whole story. Raymond's steady presence, Celeste's unexpected friendship, Lila's unwavering loyalty, Carol's maternal warmth. Each thread of her new life had woven itself into a tapestry of something real, not a performance, not a persona, but a foundation built on quiet strength." Dawn kicked again, and Amelia smiled. The Quiet One's journey had grown into something larger than she'd ever imagined. Not an ending, but a beginning. As silent and luminous as the morning sun outside her window. 1 year later, sunlight streamed through the expanded midtown apartment, dancing across the silver frame on Amelia's desk. Dawn Elaine Hartley, age 1. Laughing in her grandfather James's arms, while Helen looked on, glowing with love. Her golden brown eyes, so much like her mother's, sparkled with mischief. Her dark curls lifted slightly in the summer breeze. Amelia adjusted her laptop, preparing for the Women's Shelter Board meeting. Their newest program, Quiet Strength, had already helped dozens of women find safety and rediscover their voices. On the desk, next to Dawn's photo, sat a small plaque, Amelia Hartley, Director of Operations, Anderson Construction, and beside it, a handwritten note from Carol Anderson, the Quiet Ones lead best. The scandal had long faded from headlines. Margaret Ward now served a federal sentence. Adrian had relocated to the West Coast after completing his plea deal. The foundation's legitimate funds had been restructured into a new trust now overseen by an independent board that included, to Amelia's quiet satisfaction, Celeste Monroe. The past had lost its power. The future belonged to Dawn. And as Amelia watched her daughter chase light across the living room floor, she knew this was the story she had waited her whole life to tell. Her quiet journey of truth had begun as a whisper, but somehow it had rippled out. Amelia's story had inspired others in corporate boardrooms to speak out. Women and men who had once kept silent were now finding the courage to say, "Enough." In her apartment, laughter rang from the living room. Dawn's laughter, bright and unfiltered. Lila was babysitting during Amelia's virtual board meeting, and the sound of toys clinking and toddler joy blended with the soft hum of Halverton's streets below. It was a quiet symphony of life, of peace, of happiness that had been fought for and earned. Amelia's fingers brushed over the knitted blanket draped on the back of her chair, her grandmother's handiwork, worn soft from use, threaded with love. A new message appeared on her computer screen. Women's Shelter Director, ready when you are. She smiled. The Quiet One had found her voice, and now she would help others find theirs. Not through noise or confrontation, but through the steady, unshakable power of truth finally spoken aloud. A small gasp of laughter drew her attention. Dawn had toddled into the room, arms outstretched, eyes filled with trust. Amelia lifted her daughter into her arms, breathing in the familiar scent of baby skin and sunlight. She held her close, feeling the soft weight of a new beginning. Some stories end in thunder, but the ones that matter most, Amelia had learned, end in something quieter. Like forgiveness, like peace, like the soft, certain light of a new dawn. There are times when silence says more than words ever could. Amelia was once the quiet one, the one who listened, observed, endured, until she realized her silence carried a power of its own, a power that could protect, that could reveal, that could heal. So now we ask you, was there a moment in your life when you discovered that your voice, however quiet, held more power than you imagined? And how did that discovery change your story? Share with us in the comments below. Your voice matters here. It always has. If today's story touched you, leave a like to help others find it too. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that even the quietest heart can carry the loudest truth. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep speaking gently, bravely. Your voice is more powerful than you think.